I love living in Middle Tennessee. We've got great restaurants, entertainment, sports, and one of the nation's top Ford dealers right here in our backyard. Two Rivers Ford. Remember that name. Two Rivers has been a staple in our community since 1983. They're locally owned. They have a non-commissioned sales team, and they sell below MSRP. They've been doing business with integrity for decades. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer.
Well, isn't that appropriate? Blown gaskets. Good morning. Welcome in. Is it a good morning? I don't know. Rand Carthon's been fired by the Tennessee Titans. That's the news that we get to greet you with today. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to get involved. F&M Bank Chat available to you. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. If you want to react to the Tennessee Titans taking whatever time they needed to take, I suppose, leaving everybody hanging out in the wind as they made the decision that everybody seemed to know was going to happen as soon as Sunday, except for the person who's involved yet again. In the case of Mike Vrabel, it was the same last year. Rumors out there on Sunday night, Mike's canned. Okay, Monday goes by, Tuesday goes by, Tuesday morning comes, axed. Rand Carthon, all right, same thing. Not quite as loud as it was around Mike Vrabel, but everybody seems to know on Sunday that Rand Carthon's probably out, and it takes them 2 days to make their decision, and Tuesday apparently is Amy Adams Strunk Day to make these moves. I have so many thoughts, because listen, I understand that I said clean house, which would imply that the general manager needs to go, and that this is something that in part I did advocate for, because there's a million different things that are wrong with this football team, not just that they're 3-14, but the way that this whole thing was constructed, that they tried and it didn't work. And perhaps there is some redeeming quality. Lucas and Jackson are here. I don't often say that I am grateful for Lucas's presence, because usually I'm not, but he helps reel me back in sometimes when I get dramatic or hyperbolic about things that this particular organization does. But I just don't know how you look at this and see anything but externally, understanding that we are not in the building and that there are a million different details on this that we do not know or are not privy to, even though I spend the vast majority of my time talking to people who work in that building about the way that things run. I don't know how this doesn't scream to everybody on the outside, we don't know what the hell we're doing. Am I being dramatic here?
It's a PR challenge. right? Like that, to put it nicely, this is a public relations challenge for the Titans organization. So we know three things now. We know that Rand Carthon is no longer the general manager of the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I'll read the statement in a second.
We know that Chad Brinker will lead the search for a new general manager, and we know that Brian Callahan will continue in his role as head coach. So
those are all critically important details that we have the next 3 hours to suss through. I think this is a terrible way to treat people as anybody who runs a business. I don't understand what we've just spent the last 2 years doing, if not wasting time, even understanding that they gave this person an opportunity to be a general manager for the first time in his career and then put together a staff that was supposed to help support him in areas where he may or may not have had the necessary experience to make an NFL organization run. I understand that there's a learning curve to these things, and I think he got a raw deal. This is so hard. I mean, I genuinely wonder, this is not, it's not my team to be upset about. And a lot of people have asked me, why are you getting so upset when fans aren't as upset about the things that are happening or the way that this has gone down, or, people tried to talk me off the ledge yesterday. Well, the silence doesn't mean that they're considering making changes or something like that. It just means that it's status quo until it's not. Well, here is your message from them that it's no longer status quo, as Brian Callahan said yesterday, operating as if it's business as usual. I just don't understand how you can continue to support something like this. That maybe they do have a plan and a vision on how to make it work. Maybe they've been, it's my understanding she's been thinking about this since basically October in some form or fashion. And I'm assuming that she has people to consult with. I have no idea what those people are telling her, who those people are at this point in time, on how to go about making these decisions. So perhaps there's been a plan in place for quite some time, and we just don't know about it. That's entirely possible. But externally, again, I say, without being in the building and without being privy to every conversation that has been had, it seems like a pretty rotten way to treat people. Am I being dramatic?
No, like I said, this is a tough sell. The PR side of this is going to be interesting in the reasoning that we become privy to and the press conference. I'm sure that will follow. I'm assuming with Chad Brinker, but I don't know, who, again, is the president of football operations, leading the search for a new general manager. All the ins and outs of that. How do people continue to support this? There are people that will call in today, I'm sure, and say they're not going to renew their season tickets and they're tired of this. But people continue to support it because they're fans, and they're going to wait to see what they do at the number one pick and wait to see what the results are in 2025. And if the results are good, then none of this matters. But all that said, it's a hard sell right now. Deion has weighed in.
Deion Sanders? Wait, before we get to Deion, all right?
No one. Oh, man. Nobody waits for Deion.
I'm going to wait for Deion for a second.
How would Deion feel?
Well, apparently you're going to tell us here in a second, so I assume it can wait just for a few more seconds. If I'm going to be pissed about this, and I am, I will at least say that, and this is as much, excuse as I am going to be willing to make for them until I have the opportunity to learn more. This happened 20 minutes before we went on air today, and I would like to know a great deal more about what led to this decision, why I shouldn't think that it's directionless, because I'm sure plenty of people within the sound of my voice, including people in that organization, are going to, some of them are going to agree with that position, and some of them are going to take this very, very personally as an attack on what that team is trying to do. Change is difficult to make. These decisions are not easy. That does not mean that you should let them, as an organization, off the hook for doing something that you disagree with. But to me, if they try to spin this the way that Bob Kraft spun this on Gerard Mayo yesterday. Did you see the press conference? We played
the audio. He said he put Gerard Mayo in an untenable situation. He took the blame for it and said he felt sorry for Gerard Mayo for the situation he was in, going one and done as the head coach of the Pats.
So let me put you out of your misery, Old Yeller style, behind the shed and end your career. Because I feel so bad. My fault, Gerard. I'm so sorry for putting you in this position.
Dion said, wow, eyeball emoji.
Well, that's neither helpful nor hurtful, I suppose.
You think Dion's listening right now?
I'm glad we built up the suspense for that.
Dion's not listening. He still got me blocked on Twitter from that whole Kevin Byard thing, which is going to be a bridge that I have to cross if they end up drafting.
You and many other members of the Titans social media stratosphere.
I think half of Nashville's blocked by Deion Sanders, so if they draft Shador, this is going to be a complete and total mess. But, again, optically, it looks awful. But I will say that my whole position has been, this has been a catastrophic season on a number of different fronts. The situation that you have put in place has created factions within the building on who's backing who and who's, who thinks X is doing a good job versus Y, and who's meeting with who. And are we all doing it together when the whole thing was supposed to be what? What's the word? Can anybody tell me? I've heard it 1,000,001 times in the last 2 years. It was meant to be collaborative, and it turned into damn near the exact opposite. 615-737-1045 is the number. The thing, again, I said clean house. And maybe that's the easier thing to do. Maybe it's easier to just, is it unfair to Brian Callahan because if Rand Carthon didn't pull his weight based on what the level of expectation was from the organization, from the owner, that Brian Callahan should just lose his job because that's who they decided to bring in under Rand Carthon? Maybe not. But again, optically, it looks directionless.
We'll read the statement from Amy Adams Strunk coming up next.
I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We're fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. You're damn right it's the same old song and dance. It's just the same old. People in Tennessee seem to change their minds quite often about the direction that they want things to head in. Maybe it's commendable that you recognize a problem and you try to cut it off before the thing continues to unravel. The thing that I said yesterday, by the way, Rand Carthon's been fired by the Tennessee Titans. If you're just now joining us, 615-737-1045. We'll get your reaction to it just in a second after we read this statement from both Amy Adams Strunk and team president Burke Nihill that is published on TennesseeTitans.com in a piece by Jim Wyatt. Again, like I said yesterday, for the teams, team.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Who over there called in the code red?
I mean, that's incredible.
Which one of you in the Titans organization tried to cut me off with the emergency alert system? Which one of you?
I mean, that is...
I swear to God.
There are things that you just cannot make up.
My blood is already boiling.
That, for those who don't know, was the EAS Emergency Alert System test, which we typically get once a month, I believe. But the timing, impeccable on that. Okay. All right. So,
just quickly, what I was going to say before somebody issued the code red is there is something to the idea, I will give them a small benefit of the doubt here, a very, very small benefit of the doubt for a 3-14 football team that I just watched basically celebrate losing because they got the number 1 overall pick on Sunday, all right? There is something to not getting lulled into a false sense of security if you believe something is not headed in the right direction and you feel like it is better to make a change before it's too late. There is something to that. Beyond that, again, optically, I think this looks horrible. Now let's hear the statement from Amy Adams Strunk.
All right, let's take it piece by piece because there's a lot to sort through here. We have a statement from Amy Adams Strunk.
Work on my breathing.
We have a lot from Burke Nihill, the Titan CEO, in a conversation with Jim Wyatt. So we will begin with the first thing we have heard from controlling owner Amy Adams Strunk after the team officially announced that Rand Carthon was relieved of his duties as general manager of the Tennessee Titans. Quote, "I have loved the time I've spent with Rand. He's a talented football mind, a great man, and friend to everyone along his path." Amy continues, "It is impossible to ignore that our football team has not improved over the past 2 years. I am deeply disappointed in our poor win-loss record during this period, of course, but my decision also speaks to my concern about our long-term future should we stay the course."
Should we stay the course? What does should we stay the course mean?
I read that as my decision also speaks to my concern about our long-term future should we stay the course. Basically saying, yeah, I am concerned about the future of where this is headed if we were to stay the course with Rand as the general manager.
Okay.
That's how I read that after reading it a couple times.
All right, that's fine.
Okay. Continuing. "I love this team more than you can imagine. To our fans, we know this level of performance is not acceptable. We are humbled by your support as we continue to work towards building the team you expect and deserve." That is the statement from controlling owner Amy Adams Strunk.
Humbled by your support. Did you see the stadium on Sunday? And maybe that's enough to piss her off because she's, embarrassed that she keeps wearing these uniforms against the Houston Texans and they're over against the Houston Texans and the Houston Oilers uniforms. there are plenty of different thoughts on Rand Carthon. I've talked to a lot of different people at different levels of the organization about this for basically the last 2 years. Some people who have said, just give it more time. You'll understand once you see it more. People who will say that Rand has a certain role within the structure that they've set up, which also includes Chad Brinker. And then they promote Chad Brinker into a role above him as the president of football operations, while also promoting Rand Carthon after bringing in whatever the hell that was under Mike Vrabel. I think that there are a couple of different things that have to be taken into account on that front. And then I've also talked to people who have worked directly under these people in some form or fashion about not believing at all in the vision that was in place and not necessarily advocating for people to lose their jobs, because anybody who works in an ecosystem like professional football understands how unstable that job security can be. So you very rarely get football people wishing for other football people to lose their jobs. So there was something wrong there, something deeply wrong with the way that was being done. And maybe that's just based on what people in the building already knew how it was supposed to be done, or thought how it was supposed to be done, versus the new school of thought
a lot of
that
people
was being brought in.
That have worked for the previous regime,
Correct.
Worth noting.
Correct. And a lot of people who have expiring contracts in these situations at lower levels. But, humbled by your support, you're going to have to show them something worth supporting. People are not going to support this. The vast majority of people are not going to support this, much less doing it piecemeal. And again, should Brian Callahan lose his job just because Rand Carthon did? That's probably a pretty unfair way to look at it, and that's not necessarily the way that I was looking at it. I was looking at on-field performance, saying these people made the product collectively, front office and coaching, appreciably worse when they were supposed to come in here and develop talent and take it to the next level, which is probably why Amy's pissed. But to have one head roll when this whole thing was presented as we hunt together, we're doing this in unison, we're doing this in a conjunctive, collaborative fashion. But Will Levis getting benched is the first person to be held accountable for the way that this thing went. Then Rand Carthon the second. NPF, Jaquan Jackson, you can get into people who were benched or lost jobs because of what happened on the field. Then Rand Carthon, who based on the decisions that were made here, I don't know what else he was supposed to do with where things were at, other than he didn't knock out of the park an NFL draft in the 2 drafts, and arguably, based on your logic, Lucas, 1 draft that he was able to oversee as the general manager in that promoted role. That there wasn't any superstar caliber talent on this roster because they're just trying to get it back to baseline functional. And by the way, it got worse, but who's more to blame? Did you get the players at a variety of different positions that you were required to get? Yes, there were some miscues there. Right tackle, obviously a glaring need. Pass rush, obviously a glaring need. Beyond that, there are a variety of different things that could not be addressed all in one offseason. And to have unrealistic, how unrealistic are her expectations of where her franchise is in the first place? The thing that we all knew was that even the best people in the world at doing these respective jobs were not going to be able to dig the Titans out of the ditch that John Robinson drove them into.
I think you and a lot of people were in the boat of clean house more for the idea of clean slate reset button then Rand Carthon is not qualified. Not to say some people didn't have that opinion.
Mike Vrabel had that opinion.
But correct me if I'm wrong, that's more where you were. You were more in the boat of reset button.
You only have so many opportunities to have the number 1 overall pick to present this job as viable for a clean house reset, the way that, for example, Adam Peters was looking for and found in Washington to be able to turn that thing around, and also to have a new ownership group coming in who's far away from what the previous regime was, to be on the same page as them. What it tells me is that the whole collaborative effort, the whole thing that was supposed to be on the same page, was not in fact on the same page about where the hell the thing actually was. Because listen, Rand Carthon There are things to be nitpicked. And again, this happened 20 minutes before we went to air. I want to talk to a lot more people about what's going on over there before I make any definitive statements about what Rand did or did not do right, because I'm not in the building every day. Relative to expectation for where the Tennessee Titans were when he took over in 2022, or I guess 2023, January of 23, heading into the 23 season and then into 24, I don't know what they expected this thing to be. And who's most responsible if you went out and did all the things as far as players go, other than he said the thing that he probably shouldn't have said, right? If you wanted to hold something against Rand Carthon, it would be that Sirius XM interview where he did, we literally checked all the boxes when very much the boxes were not all literally checked.
At other point, the ball didn't bounce our way, right?
So it's on him for setting unrealistic expectations too. So whether they, when they were hired collectively, Brinker, Carthon, Robinson, all of these, or Anthony Robinson, not John, the structure that was brought in to replace the previous front office administration, whether they upsold her and made her expectations unrealistic is a different matter, because if you're her at that point, then it would be fair to turn around and say, but you told me this was going to be better. It's not. What happened? I still don't agree with I don't agree with doing one and not all of it.
We've heard from Amy Adams-Drunk with her official statement. President and CEO Burke Nihill talked about this with Jim Wyatt on the team website. This is Burke Nihill's statement to Jim. Quote, "We just haven't improved this football team for the last couple of years. We've won 9 of the 34 games we've played over the past 2 seasons.
You don't got to tell me.
And as much as the record was concerning to Amy as it was to all of our fans, her assessment was also that we are not on course to get to where we need to go moving forward. As difficult as these decisions are, she believed it was the right one." He continues, "Speaking of a change of the general manager specifically, Rand was hired into a very different job description than the one that exists today. Rand was hired for a general manager position that was very specific to the circumstances at the time." I add parenthetically with Mike Vrabel as the head coach.
Yeah.
"And the forecasting was the general manager would be able to partner very closely with the head coach," again, parenthetically, Mike Vrabel, "the existing head coach. And as the circumstances exist today, the general manager position is different. And so what Chad, who is leading the search, will be looking for is a very different skill set for a very different job description."
Do you think Chad Brinker is going to conduct a search and just land on himself? Well, president, I guess technically based on the structure, it would be a demotion to go from president of football operations to general manager based on the way that it was currently constructed. But again, these things are being described as being different now that the job description has allegedly changed.
We've also heard from Chad Brinker.
Again, Vrabel didn't want him. So, what is this? What is this about bringing somebody in to work in conjunction with the head coach if the head coach is saying, no, I don't want this guy?
Chad Brinker also spoke to Jim Wyatt. We'll hear from that in just a second. But Burke Nihill continues, quote, "Rand had very different circumstances over the last 2 years in terms of his role. At the end of the day, this is a results-oriented business. Amy's assessment is we needed to make a change." That is from CEO and President Burke Nihill to Jim Wyatt on TennesseeTitans.com.
I'm going to have 2.5 more hours to talk about this. I want you guys to have the opportunity to weigh in. We'll bounce back and forth between us and between phone calls and what's going on in the comments section. The news of the day, Rand Carthon fired after 2 seasons as the Titans general manager, and the Titans have the number 1 overall pick. Let's ride. 615-737-1045. I'm going to start with somebody who I think is going to have a unique perspective on this, or at least a perspective that people should want to hear, and that's one of our regulars, UW.
Wow. First of all, thanks for having me. So I've been a fan of the team for 28 years, and just interesting seeing how this time 2 years ago they trotted out Rand. Everyone was in the facility. They just celebrated him like, oh, he's going to be the savior for this franchise. And then 2 years later, they unceremoniously kick him out. And it's just interesting, like, we've seen what Rand did over these 2 years. He signed 2 receivers that got 1,000 yards. In the past 26 years before that, there were only 2 receivers that they signed in free agency. They got 1,000 yards. Signed a 1,000-yard rusher. he fixed the left side of the offensive line, including Cushenberry before he got injured. The secondary, he rebuilt that to a degree. He found gems like Brownlee, and he had good drafts. So my thing is, Miss Amy has turned into a villain. It's like, from 2015 when she got the franchise from her brother up until that Philadelphia game where A.J. Brown went off, it was going well. Now it's like a Game of Thrones. She's basically Daenerys, and now it's time for her nephew to come take her out, respectfully. Maybe it's time for him to take over the team. Maybe they need a coup in-house because it's very clear that she doesn't know what she wants anymore. The goalposts keep on moving.
Well, that's the thing. Thank you for the call. The goalposts keep on moving. They've literally changed the job description of the general manager. 9 and 25? 9 and 24? The record while Rand Carthon was the general manager? Listen.
9 of the 34 games over the last 2 seasons.
Okay. So the results, it is a results-driven business. But are these people given did Rand Carthon, when interviewing for this job, give her realistic expectations about what he was going to be able to do? And then in turn, did the organization give Rand Carthon realistic expectations about what his role was within the scope of this thing and how much time legitimately was going to be allowed for them to continue to articulate their vision? They had him skip the Senior Bowl last year so he could stay back here with Callahan.
Yeah, they were hiring coaches, filling out the coaching staff.
Filling out the coaching staffs. But that's not, sometimes that happens with general managers, but so you took the person who oversees personnel out of the personnel process to help the coach with the coaching staff that you put together, that you helped recruit. Denard Wilson is somebody who Rand Carthon very much knows. That helped get Denard Wilson to Tennessee.
He's using those relationships. So Brinker was at the Senior Bowl, correct? Or am I wrong about that?
Chad Brinker, I don't remember off the top of my head. They did have representation at the Senior Bowl. It's not like the Titans completely skipped the Senior Bowl. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
the person.
If I remember correctly, Brinker was in attendance at the Senior Bowl.
So, what does that tell me about Rand's level of importance last year anyway? Is Brinker more important than Rand when it comes to personnel? Based on what that was last year?
If that was the case, would that make this move make more sense? If Brinker had more control over personnel anyway.
I had people telling me as soon as they brought him in that Brinker was actually the person that you should be keeping an eye on here as far as what the Titans are doing from a personnel standpoint, which would, of course, run completely counterintuitive to the idea of a general manager existing and being hired. So is Rand Carthon just supposed to be like team diplomat? Oh, I get along with Calvin Ridley. Let me call him up. We're both South Florida boys. I'll get Calvin Ridley to Tennessee. Was that solely not solely, but was that the primary purpose of his job?
Well, there's more from Burke Nihill on just this. As he continues with Jim Wyatt, and we'll read what Chad Brinker had to say to Jim later, but continuing with Burke Nihill, Nihill tells Jim Wyatt that Chad Brinker will, quote, break ties with respect to the 53-man roster. He says, quote, it is important to Amy to have absolute clarity in the football organization. And so, while the general manager position will have a primary responsibility on all these things Chad is describing in terms of the day-to-day of overseeing the roster and the coaching staff, Chad is the leader of the football program. So Chad will be the final authority on all football matters, including the roster.
Even if they hire a GM.
Brinker, Callahan, and the new general manager will work together to make decisions. That's straight from the piece by Jim Wyatt. But again, that quote is from Burke Nihill. Chad is the leader of the football program. So Chad will be the final authority on all football matters, including the roster.
More of your phone calls. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to get in. Joe is next.
Good morning, guys. How are we doing? I appreciate you having me on. The whole timing of all of this really makes you question what was the final tipping point that caused this move to happen. Because now in a matter of 2 months, you've got to find your GM that has a coherent vision with your head coach to prepare for free agency. And then shortly a month after that, you've now got to get ready to pick for the number one overall pick in the NFL draft or trade down, whatever they decide to do with it. So now you're going to be put in the position of scrambling to find your GM. And then do we run into the position next year where if we don't succeed, that you've got a GM that doesn't gel with your head coach. So then you've got to move on from the head coach, and we're right back where we were with Mike Vrabel when we got Rand Carthon. So it's really a head-scratcher when you had a GM come in that seemingly made good moves and brought in solid acquisitions to a roster that had an enormous amount of holes and needed a lot of help. The pieces that he brought in were starting to put us to the next level, and it seemed there was a few more holes plus the quarterback position that really needed to be addressed. So now, is this going to put us back down that same hole where we're searching for a head coach again next year if we don't make the jump that Amy's wanting us to make? So it really makes you start to question, is Amy's involvement with the team starting to impede too much with the progress of where this football team is headed?
And the wheels on the bus go round and round. 615-737-1045 is the number. Thanks for the call. We're going to continue to work through this. Congratulations to the Tennessee Titans. You wanted national attention. You're now the lead topic on ESPN because not only do you have the number one overall pick, but you fired a general manager who was, maybe they were never going to give him the opportunity to make the number one overall pick. Maybe it was never his to make based on the structure that they had in place. I mean, seriously, if they're talking about this whole search thing just to land on Chad Brinker, maybe that makes more sense because then you have the people already in place, the staff already in place to continue to try and do this thing with a level of seamlessness that you might not otherwise be able to do if you brought in an outside perspective. But also, I mean, if that's the decision that you want to make, just make it. It's your Titans fans. It's your team. You tell me how you feel about it. We'll get more of your phone calls. We're going to scrap, we're going to scrap basically anything that we were going to do today because General Manager Rand Carthon has been fired and the Titans, they're still on the clock.
All right, Titans fans, might be a tough day for you. It has been a tough season for you. I know that. What can make your day better? I'll tell you right now. It's Hattie B's. Doors open in 18 minutes at any one of their 7 locations in Middle Tennessee. Head to the factory at Franklin, Lower Broadway, Melrose, Midtown, Nashville West, even the Nashville Airport and Nissan Stadium. By the way, the factory at Franklin location, that's been open since 7 a.m. That's right. Hattie B's is doing breakfast in Franklin. You got to go try it out. Hattie B's, a family-run restaurant serving up your favorite Southern food and authentic Nashville hot chicken. Titans fans are hot today. Might as well go get some hot chicken for lunch. If you want to skip the line, download the Hattie B's app. You get a free dessert just by doing so. Order for pickup through the app. Walk in, get your Hattie B's famous hot chicken. Stack rewards for deals on your favorite Hattie B's sides. That's the best in town. Desserts, chicken, and more. Go to Hattie B's today.
Indeed we have. A vision, you say? Well, they didn't do it while we were sleeping. Welcome back to the show. We're fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. The Titans have fired general manager Rand Carthon. I forget that we have Titans fans that work on this show. Just because I'm not doesn't mean that I shouldn't cede the floor to Jackson, who's wearing Titans gear, who also...
Head to toe today.
Head to toe Titans gear. Look at you, you shill.
I did wear head. I did
I'm
pick
over
a
here
bad day to
burning
wear
down
this,
your
didn't I?
franchise. I'm over here burning down your franchise, and you're head to toe, two-tone blue, baby.
I did not pick a great day to wear this.
Jackson asked us off air, so he goes, does that mean we won't be getting any more of these T hats that Rand Carthon wears?
I do love this hat. It is my favorite hat.
All right, so I'm gonna let you guys talk because I've talked enough, and we're gonna turn it over to the phone calls. As Titans fans, how do the two of you feel?
Jackson, go ahead.
I think it's better to do it now than mid-season next year. If they were out, then that's what needed to happen. I think if you go into the season with him on the hot seat, so to say, and he makes the number 1 overall pick and you fire him mid-season, you're in a worse position than you would be today.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's not an unfair perspective, even if I can find flaw with it.
Look, it's tough right now for Titans fans to trust that the organization is getting this right moving forward. I get that. Like that, this is a tough sell right now. What wins back that trust? Wins. Good football.
If they get it again, it's like after Vrabel.
Right.
Did you get it right? The answer was no.
No.
It went 3-14. People are, knives out, pitchforks out, torches out. If they win again, nobody will care.
Exactly. If you execute whatever is to come and you go in the right direction with the number 1 pick, maybe that's a young quarterback, and then we fast forward to November 2025 and said quarterback is bringing you the excitement that a Jaden Daniels, and now a Bryce Young is bringing to Carolina fans. This all washes away. We look back at this and say, yeah, okay, Chad Brinker was in charge all along. Then you put him in there. He's got roster control, and, we keep plugging along. And had some bumps in the road to get there, but look at us. We're winning. We've got good quarterback play. Those are the results that will win back the fan base. But I understand why it's tough for fans to feel good about anything right now. I mean, there's nothing to sell right now. There's no on-field results to sell right now. That's the only thing that truly wins back a fan base. So I remember when John Robinson traded A.J. Brown, and you got on and you were very, very strong in how horrible a decision it was. Awful. Yeah. And obviously, in hindsight, it was.
John Barshan in Philadelphia, one of my buddies, put on Twitter, the Titans stay firing GMs, and A.J. Brown stays catching touchdowns. That's not a fine. Nobody knows who John Barshan is.
Yeah, I have no idea who that person is. Now, I remember saying to you on that day, well, hang on. You don't know that this is a terrible decision. You just don't know that yet. No, hang on. Hear me out. Because I said, we don't have the results. If you trade A.J. Brown to Philly, and he kind of continues to have inconsistencies in regards to availability, Traylon Burks comes in here and replaces that production on a rookie deal, a la Stephon Diggs traded from Minnesota, draft Justin Jefferson. It had been done before. You pointed that out to me the other day. Then it's the good decision. So I didn't like it at all the day after they traded A.J. Brown. But I remember saying to you, no, you don't know that. You can't just blanket say you don't have the results. You don't know until you have the results.
And my argument was he's the most talented wide receiver this organization has ever drafted. It's stupid.
I agreed. But we didn't have the results. Now we do. And that was a horrific decision that clearly was a domino effect for what has happened with the franchise since. We don't have
people in the YouTube chat saying, Lucas, the Jedi are gone. Join the dark side. It's better here. There's no hope.
Well, this is all to say, we don't have the results of what's going to happen here. But like the A.J. Brown trade.
Oh, I didn't say that it was a bad decision. I said that the optics are horrifying.
So this is a good decision to you?
I don't know that yet.
So you've learned from that experience.
No. Well, the AJ thing. You're not gonna tell me that I was wrong. I was right.
Well, obviously you were right, but you've learned from the experience of we don't know if it's a good decision because we don't have results in hand.
I wouldn't say that I've learned from anything at all because I was right.
That's fair. You don't exactly
I don't often
learn
from things. I just keep doing my thing,
yes,
baby.
I'm with you.
This is my again. I don't know if this is net positive or negative.
Yeah.
I know it looks awful. awful.
Yes.
I know it looks like they don't know what they're doing. I know it looks like they just wasted everybody's time for the last 2 seasons. I know it looks like Mike Vrabel was right.
About Rand Carthon?
Rand.
Now, you can say Mike Vrabel was right in that regard. You can also say the Titans were right to fire Mike Vrabel for wanting roster control.
Listen, Mike did a bunch of stuff to subvert his ownership. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay? You
Agreed.
cannot actively undermine your bosses. I'm not saying that Mike shouldn't have been fired for that. I'm just saying that on net result, he was right.
This is the decision that has massive national voices like Field Yates taking to Twitter and saying the plan has been rudderless when talking about the Tennessee Titans, right? These type of decisions lead to those optics. It's a tough sell, PR-wise. We don't have the results. But Titans fans have the right to have a lack of trust right now in where things are going because the results have not been there. And until they are, it's going to be hard to have any conviction that things are headed in the right direction. And I understand that.
Back to the phone, 615-737-1045. The amount of people that are texting me about this nonsense. Inside, outside, all over the net. Here's your national attention, Titans fans. Congratulations. Jeremy next.
Hey, Buck, how you doing?
I don't know. I'm here.
I'm a lifelong Titans fan.
How are you doing, Jeremy?
Yes,
That's the more important question.
It doesn't matter how I'm doing.
Nobody cares how Buck is doing.
Well, I care.
How are you doing?
This stuff, for lack of a better term, this has become dysfunctional and a dumpster fire. What happened to the days of Floyd Reed? We had direction. We had an understanding of what this team was going to be, down to the head coach. Now, every 2 or 3 years, we see something different. We see a 500 ball club who has now hit the toilet. I have no hope. I wear a paper bag. I am proud to wear my paper bag. And this Sunday, I saw $5 tickets online. Looked at TV, nobody at the game. What do we see that they don't see? And what do they see that we don't see? Thanks.
I mean, they'll tell you that they see a variety of different things that you don't see and that you're wrong for thinking that they're rudderless or directionless or all the different things that smart football people are calling them right now as they continue to make decisions. We're going to go through the timeline, all right, of the last, 3 years? 3.5 years of Amy Adams Strunk decision-making coming up next. And again, it's your franchise, your Titans fans. You get to tell me how you feel about this. I can try and provide you as much context as humanly possible, and I will continue to do so. You think Rand Carthon feels like he's better off without him?
I doubt he feels great today.
I don't know.
But I don't know.
I bet it feels better than the last 2 days have felt.
Yeah, I don't know.
615-737-1045 is the number. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone.
It is 11 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. Breaking news this morning, the Tennessee Titans are parting ways with general manager Rand Carthon after 2 years in the position. They announced in a statement from controlling owner Amy Adams Strunk today saying, quote, "I've loved the time I've spent with Rand. He's a talented football mind, a great man, and friend to everyone along his path. It is impossible to ignore that our football team has not improved over the past 2 years. I am deeply disappointed in our poor win-loss record during this period, of course, but my decision also speaks to my concern about our long-term future should we stay the course. I love this team more than you can imagine. To our fans, we know this level of performance is not acceptable. We are humbled by your support as we continue to work towards building the team you expect and deserve." End quote. President of Football Operations Chad Brinker will lead the search for a new general manager, and Brian Callahan will remain as the head coach. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Do the Titans have direction? What is Amy Adams Strunk thinking? Rand Carthon fired today. Again, you can tell me that what am I outraged about when I said yesterday that they should clean house because I'm tired of them doing things that win press conferences instead of winning football games? But my position has been, you brought this thing in collectively. It should either stay collectively based on the vision, if you actually believe in the vision, or you should make wholesale changes with the rare opportunity, the golden opportunity, that being this god-awful, the absolute best at losing, which is what they were in 2024, en route to the number one overall draft pick, the golden opportunity that having that draft pick presents to you to make this job infinitely more attractive than it's ever been. I know that, for the most part, the vision theoretically could still be in place, right? Because Brinker was a part of hiring Callahan. So they can say, no, it's just this one piece, just this general manager that we picked over the head coach who didn't want to work with that general manager in the first place, really. We were moving on from that anyway. This allows us to stay in a similar direction, just with a few less parts or a different part that we think will make it work better. If you were the Titans, that's certainly how you would pitch it. But let me walk you through this timeline that was pointed out by Albert Breer, but you guys know the timeline well. You remember where we were on December the 6th, 2022. Do you remember?
One more time, Jackson was talking to my ear.
December. Thank you for paying attention to the very important show that we're doing today. By the way, Rand Carthon fired by the Titans. 12/6/22. Do you remember where we were?
12/6/22, we were broadcasting live at Toy Field, and we got the news that John Robinson had been fired the day. It was the day after, or the 2 days after the Eagles game.
Loves a Tuesday. Loves a Tuesday. Amy Adams Strunk loves a Tuesday when she's firing people. 12/6/22, they fire J-Rob. January 18th, 23, they hire Rand. January 9th, 24, they fire Vrabel.
Man, almost a year to the day.
Yep. Happy anniversary for Titans fans, almost. January 24th, 24, they hire Brian Callahan. January 7th, 25, they fire Rand Carthon. What do they want? What are they looking for? Teron Davenport points out on Twitter of ESPN, and we would all agree that Teron is far more nuanced and far more, reasonable than, for example, me as a Titans reporter. Teron Davenport says the description of what the Titans are now looking for in a GM sounds an awful lot like the one that they just let go. Would you disagree with that statement?
Let me find one more time. Well, we have not read. This feels like a good time to read what Chad Brinker had to say to Jim Wyatt on TennesseeTitans.com. Quote, "The person that we're going to be looking for is going to fit within the philosophy and how we're going to build this program going forward. I look at this partnership as one heartbeat. We're going to be working together on all things. At the end of the day, we're all going to work together collectively and work through what is the best decision for the Tennessee Titans. So if there is a situation, I want healthy debate so we can make the best decision we can make. All egos aside, it is about what is best for the team. I'm going to allow our new general manager to do his job and set free agency strategy and draft strategy, build a roster, and I'll be right there with him. And again, Burke Nihill.
So he's talking about this as if he doesn't want that job. Or if he's not actively, at least he's not publicly saying that he wants to be in that job.
But you have Burke Nihill saying Chad Brinker will be the final authority on all football matters, including the roster. It sounds like Chad Brinker is at the top of this thing.
So I'm laughing because I'm seeing more tweets come out. Tehran says, who knew while we were watching Sam Phelan excel on the show Survivor, the same thing was happening upstairs at St. Thomas Sports Park.
Well, and here's more from Brinker. And this
how does it feel to have your franchise? I mean, seriously, to the people in the building who I know are listening, how does it feel to have your franchise compared to the show Survivor?
Yeah, well, ask multiple fan bases across the NFL how they feel about that.
There's dysfunction. I've talked about this before. There's dysfunction in every industry. There's dysfunction in every business. I mean, hell, we're the most dysfunctional show on the air here at The Zone. You don't have to look very far.
That's true.
To find dysfunction in buildings. So it's not like these things don't happen in a lot of places. When you have that many people who are competitive, who are what's the word that I'm looking for? Who are motivated to try and reach the top of their respective professions in incredibly competitive professions. You have a lot of jockeying for position, but they've turned this situation into who can get closest to Amy fastest. And maybe that's how it's always going to be on like, all right, well, this is what I'm going to do, Miss Amy, to get this thing turned around. It's all Miss Amy, Miss Amy, Miss Amy, right? And maybe that's how all NFL organizations are. I've only covered the one in my entire career, so this is the only one that I have any level of familiarity with.
Here's Chad Brinker, according to Jim Wyatt on TennesseeTitans.com. Quote, I think the general manager position is unique to their respective organizations. This particular job, what we'll be looking for is someone who has spent their career as a scout, is a top-flight, top-level evaluator who has spent the majority of their career projecting college players to the National Football League. They have had a major hand in setting the draft board and preferably a consistent, winning organization, and you can see their fingerprints all over the roster. It is someone who wakes up every single day, and the only thing they think about is building a roster, evaluating players, watching tape, working with the coaching staff. And not just someone who knows how to collect talent, but someone who really understands how to build a team and how all the pieces fit together that I can work with, not only in the short term, winning today, but building for the future, the long term, and understanding how all those pieces fit together.
Is Chad Brinker reading from his own resume?
If you make a decision here, how it impacts a decision down the road, and really understand the full puzzle. At the end of the day, this person is going to be all ball all day. They are going to focus on the roster and the coaching staff, and I will continue in my role with handling all the other areas that surround the center of our program, scouting and coaches. So I will support that person, but we are looking for a general manager who wakes up every day and is focused on building the team. Ultimately,
wasn't that what they all ball all day? Like what else are you looking for in a general? What are you trying to say? What are you not so subtly trying to say about Rand Carthon?
This is not a quote from Brinker or Nihill, but then Jim writes after that quote, ultimately, Brinker, Callahan, and the new general manager will work together to make decisions. But Chad Brinker will be the final authority on all football matters, including the roster.
All right, man. Well, that's what it is. So I guess they can keep most of their processes in place and just find somebody who fits all of those things and is willing to go along to get along within whatever they already have set up. But so seriously, what happens if this team wins 7 games next year? Are there 2-5, 2-6? What was Vrabel when they allowed Diana that access to do the Ready Steady Vrabel piece? A month and a half before firing him.
That was 6-11 was the final record.
No. But what was the record at the time?
Oh, at the time.
They
what was that, like November of that season?
Maybe two wins, maybe 3 wins at the time. What happens if they have 3 wins in November?
Jackson said, and I agree. Jackson said he thinks it came around the Thanksgiving mark of the season.
So let's say 3 to 4 wins and on track for 7 or 8. Is that sufficient? Because if it is a results-based business, and this team is not providing results. Again, I am not going to
Yeah, Titans had 3 wins at the time that came out.
Okay, so what if they have 3 wins with a rookie quarterback and a coaching staff that's still very much, I mean, Brian Callahan, by his own admission, is saying that he's learning on the job. And I had somebody point out to me the other day, imagine, and listen, lots of people learn on the job, but I had somebody point out to me the other day, you imagine if a doctor or a lawyer came up to you and said, yeah, I'm learning on the job here, kids. I know that those are 2 different things, football coach.
A little bit different.
And, heart surgeon or something like that.
Just a little bit different.
But, I mean, for the amount of money that's poured into these positions, one's significantly more compensated than the other in a lot of circumstances. I mean, there are going to be people that want this job because it's an NFL general manager opening. And there are plenty of people like Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan who will take jobs that may not be perfect or may have flaws or they may have skepticism about just because it's their opportunity and they believe in themselves that they can turn it around. But again, they've moved the goalposts on people. They did it to Vrabel. They did it to Rand. Are they going to do it to the next? Are they going to do it to Callahan and whomever comes next? Are they going to do it to Brinker? They have the number 1 overall pick, and they can't let their fans be happy for 24 hours. They just can't let fans enjoy after what has been an unrelenting hell of a season. They just can't let them have peace for a period of time. And again, none of it will matter if they win games. None of my bitching and moaning, none of the way that I currently think about them, even though I'm still going to have questions about them, how much of the winning is covering up whatever the hell else is going on in there at this point in time that just, because the Texans are a horrifically dysfunctional or have been a horrifically dysfunctional organization and they started to win games and nobody cared anymore. So maybe it's enough for fans. Just show us better football, and we won't care about whatever dysfunction you may or may not have going on behind closed doors.
Well, no, that is
how this thing is run.
Yeah, that is what it is. You hit on the number 1 pick, start to win games, show promise at the quarterback position is how you work your way out of this with the fan base.
Do you trust them to stick with the direction, though? I don't know how.
Right.
I don't know how you could.
Sure, when things are bad.
Things were awful this year. I mean, awful, truly awful. But again, their decisions at the very top led to this mess that they are currently still trying to dig themselves out of. So, listen, it's as close to an admission of they got it wrong as they're going to give you. I mean, I don't know that Amy Adams Strunk is going to do the Bob Kraft thing and say, you know what, it's on me. I screwed up. I put Rand in a job before he was ready. That's my fault. All the things that Bob Kraft is being absolutely dragged for, by the way. People did not necessarily buy off on, well, what a saint you are, Bob, for coming out and saying, I got that run wrong. Let me can you to show you just how wrong I got it. 615-737-1045 is the number. Somebody said Buck for GM. I don't want that job. I bet. Listen, if I'm Rand Carthon and I have as many connections in the league as it was sold that he had when he took this job and all the lovely things. By the way, a caller, UW, brought that up earlier, right? The big celebration, the rousing applause. You remember the day they brought him into the new facility that they put out on social media to show, what the new look Titans were going to be and how much better the vibes were going to be. And look at the entire organization here to celebrate Rand Carthon. Canned. Basically, I mean, less than 2 years from the time that he was hired. Say what you mean and mean what you say. It's a great line from Zach Bingham that I like to steal quite often, but I've never felt it more than I do right now. 615-737-1045 is the number. Q says, Buck, you would take that job in a heartbeat. Stop that. I don't want that. I don't want that in my life, nor am I qualified. Beyond.
Yeah, start there.
Yeah, I'm not qualified. Keith Bullock will tell you I have a very, very low football IQ, and he's not wrong about that. I'm a talking head for a reason. But if I'm Rand Carthon and I have as many connections as he has around the league, and people are calling me being like, hey, what's it like over there? Or if I'm Mike Vrabel and if I have as many connections as I do around the league and people are calling me and asking, hey, what's going on over there? I genuinely wonder what they would say. I'm sure it's not very nice. Your phone call's coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. The Tennessee Men's Clinic is here to help you as they have helped so many other guys over the course of a decade plus. that they have been in business because there are so many misconceptions out there about specifically treating erectile dysfunction. The Tennessee Men's Clinic can debunk those for you. Lots of men assume that if the pills don't work, they have no other options than, for example, irreversible surgery to treat ED. And the sad reality is that if you go to a doctor for treatment, specifically for that, those may be the only protocols that they have available for you. The Tennessee Men's Clinic specializes in men's sexual health issues. It's all they do. It makes them the experts in the field. They have access to multiple protocols and options to treat your ED based on your specific needs and what's going on in your body. So don't trust your health to an online pharmacy and don't feel like you're out of options. We want you to understand all the options that you have available when it comes to ED treatment. They have treatments for everything at the Tennessee Men's Clinic, from low testosterone to ED, treatments that increase size and stamina, and everything else in between. So schedule an appointment online today at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for their Franklin or Midtown location, or call them 615-208-9090. let it whip, let it rip. That's what the Titans are doing. They're just letting it fly, huh? Titans fire GM Rand Carthon after 2 seasons. Brian Callahan is going to stay, according to reports. Chad Brinker, president of football operations, is going to oversee the search for the new GM. The description of the GM that they're looking for sounds very much like what they told you the GM that they last hired was as a person and as a professional, but apparently that was not enough, and they've changed the job description of what the Titans GM job is going to be. All ball, all the time is in the statement.
Scouting background is what they want.
Titans players, well, specifically one, I won't make it plural because I haven't seen plural yet, but they're taking to social media. Jarvis Brownlee, one of the biggest contributors to this football team this year, and somebody who I know connected with Rand Carthon on a personal basis because of their backgrounds, both being from South Florida, the Miami area specifically, quote, tweeted the news of the Titans parting ways with general manager Rand Carthon and just put a red flag emoji, ...
He had another tweet that followed a minute later, quote, tweeting the same announcement saying, best rookie class this year. Wow.
Well, certainly they played the most snaps of a rookie class. I don't know necessarily if I would say the best rookie class, but okay, that's fine. But what Jarvis may or may not be privy to is who was most responsible for that rookie class, which is, I suppose, the argument that they could make if they wanted to argue with their own players on social media, as opposed to letting them speak their thoughts at this particular point in time. I am the other part of this is some news that was, well, I guess it's not news because it's old, but something that was pointed out on social media today about Rand Carthon. Fired after 2 seasons, Ian Rappaport says, signed an extension this past offseason. He has 4 years remaining on his current deal. So
yeah, we didn't know that, right?
I don't ever remember hearing that. 4 years. So now, until Mike Vrabel gets a head coaching job, paying Mike, until John Robinson, if John Robinson gets a GM job, paying John, and currently paying Rand Carthon on that contract as they continue to make changes within the organization. 615-737-1045 is the number. The news of the day, Titans general manager Rand Carthon fired. The rest of it, for the most part, sounds like it's staying. Now, the thing, here again, there were flaws with Rand Carthon. I'm not going to say that I disagree with the firing of Rand Carthon. What I disagree with is keeping everything else that led to 3-14 and making Rand Carthon. I mean, is Rand Carthon solely responsible for the Titans being 3-14 this year?
A lot of people are responsible.
A lot of people are responsible. So why is he, what specifically, and, they don't ever have to say this publicly, although I think some people can make again, it would be assumptions and speculations. I have had plenty of conversations throughout the 2 years that he's been there for people who work under him and who have worked under that structure that disagreed vehemently with the structure that was in place and very often questioned the leadership that was put in place. But how, again, you hired him, could you not? What was it just the best option available to you at the time? Like, what was the logic? I'm dying to know what the reason was that they saw him as the person to help see this thing into the future.
To pair with Vrabel.
To pair with Vrabel, again, I can't understand that other than she didn't want anybody to do with John Robinson and Ryan Cowden, who went on to work in the Giants organization, and Monty Ossenfort, who went on to become the general manager of the Arizona Cardinals, ended up taking jobs elsewhere, both of whom have scouting backgrounds. Monty doing pretty well. So did you just want something different for the sake of having something different? And there's nobody more different than John Robinson than Rand Carthon was. Different from John Robinson than Rand Carthon was. Like very, very fundamentally different people. So maybe it's just, like we talk about presidential administrations. Oftentimes you vote for the person that's the complete opposite of the last person that was in office or any level of politics, I suppose. So is it just as simple as that, or what was sold to you that did not come to fruition that made you feel like, no, this is not heading in the right direction? Or did this person not deliver on those kind of things when the opportunity was there to be delivered upon based on what your expectation of the job that they were there to do? Because again, the statement reads like they've moved the goalpost on the job itself.
Yeah, there is a very specific quote that I kind of keep coming back to from Chad Brinker to Jim Wyatt on TennesseeTitans.com, and I'll scroll down to find it, that they want someone that is all ball all day. I don't know. I don't want to look into that deeper to say that that's a statement.
Did we get him in trouble because Bert gave him the chef hat?
Oh, Carthon? It was a fun bit. He leaned into it.
It was a smart idea by Bert at the time. I don't know if we put him in a bad spot.
Again, look, every move he made in the offseason,
everybody agreed with.
Were moves that people were almost unanimously on board with. Now, people had questions about the L'Jarius Sneed contract and injury health issues. And obviously, in hindsight, injury issues were what held back Sneed this year, although it's not the issue that there was reportedly concern about.
No.
When they were seeking out that trade.
That happened in the season that you traded for.
Yeah. But everything he did last offseason, it pretty much, he, for the most part, did everything Titans fans wanted him to do. He didn't address the right tackle spot, right?
And you could have said, checked all the boxes again. Yeah. That's a terrible quote. They did themselves a disservice, and Brian Callahan was asked about this yesterday specifically, and the idea of setting expectations. In fact, Jackson, can we go to that question that was asked of Brian Callahan about the checking of boxes that Rand Carthon gave? Because what he was asked was, well, did you guys set the expectations too high? And Brian Callahan very quickly said, well, I don't remember setting any expectations other than we were coming in here to be meaningfully competitive. Then a follow-up was asked, well, what about the interview that Rand Carthon did where he said, literally, we checked all the boxes?
Sure, I understand that. I think that, we did feel like we had put pretty good effort into trying to get ourselves in position to be competitive, and when you sign, we want to be a draft and develop football team. That's what we want to do. And in the meantime, though, we needed to supplement with free agency. I don't think that any of us are under any guises that this is how you build a team all the time. You don't want to do that all the time. But we had to find ways to get some more players to inject some, ability onto the roster and keep us moving forward. And some of them worked well, and some of them, are kind of incomplete. We don't really know on some of the guys because of the injuries. But I did feel good at the time about where we put holes, where we plugged them. Obviously, we couldn't fix every possible problem, but I thought we did our best to try to do that and field the roster that was going to help us be competitive. Now, again, the results don't speak for it, and we didn't do that. It didn't ultimately come to fruition, but I think that's ultimately where I land on it.
Checking all the boxes was too strong.
Too strong.
It was too far.
And there was no way to do. There was so many. Again, everybody in the world knew it's the best case for either of them. You were in an unwinnable position out of the gate. Did you do enough with what you had? No, but you were in a terrible position because this franchise was in hell when you inherited it as the general manager and then following up as the head coach there. He acknowledged, he has said several times about the need for right tackle. You're probably going to see a bunch of different right tackles here next year, and all the different things that he said about the roster, the quarterback position, all the other things, all the decisions that they've made as a coaching staff while trying to do it. But again, to me, what they did, like the plan this offseason, was there a lack of competency to signing Lloyd Cushenberry, signing Calvin Ridley, trading for L'Jarius Sneed? I had issues with paying two corners the amount of money that they paid two corners, and then the results obviously did not bear themselves out in a functional way. That was really the only thing that I would go back and nitpick.
Injuries, yeah.
Retroactively, because one had a history of injury and the other one was kind of tenuous with a plan, a very specific plan that was needed to keep him on the field, and then you were undone because he had an injury completely unrelated to that. But again, did people have questions of competency when they were spending $228 million in the offseason, getting T'Vondre Sweat, doing all the research, the extensive research that they did to make them feel comfortable taking T'Vondre Sweat, the J.C. Latham pick, Jarvis Brownlee. Again, Jarvis is on Twitter talking about the best rookie class this year. I don't know if that's actually true. They played a hell of a lot of snaps. Certainly the most, the rookies that played the most of any team this year, the rookies that were on the field the most of any team this year, but was there any questions of competency, save the fact that he didn't address right tackle specifically, rolled the dice with NPF and failed, and didn't address edge rush specifically? Was there any questions of competency when they were going through that process?
For the most part, everyone was on board with the Titans offseason and how they attacked it, understanding how bad of a place the roster was in, the lack of players in-house as part of the foundation of players that you drafted, very, very few of those. I mean, I heard Zach Lyons going through the numbers. I think you can still count on two hands, the amount of players that are still here that John Robinson drafted.
No, it was awful.
So last offseason, he checked almost all the boxes that you can check in free agency, right? And the draft addressing the left tackle spot. They did not check all the boxes, obviously, and the roster clearly was still in so bad a place that even that entire free agency of spending was not enough to lift them out of 3-14. And injuries had something to do with that as well. But yeah, there was not a Titans fan that took issue with Rand Carthon last offseason.
How much of this is about Levis?
That's where I was going to go next.
Because here's some context that Levis is a part of this. People have talked about, well, can you hold Rand Carthon accountable for Will Levis because of the structure that was in place and all these different things around Will Levis? There is some reason to believe that they would have been interested in taking Will Levis in the first. There's many reasons to believe. There's been plenty of reporting to this effect that if they didn't get Will Levis where they got him, they were trying to trade up in the first round to get him. And I don't know if they would have taken Will at 11 if Skoronski wasn't there, but they were interested in Will Levis. Now, of course, Ryan Carthon is still involved at that time. Mike Vrabel is obviously still in the picture at that time. And people have said, well, there's been speculation to the effect, none of which, by the way, has ever been really verified, that Amy Adams Strunk had the biggest say in the room about specifically Will Levis. And listen, I think Zach and Blaine have talked about that before. Blaine may know something that I don't. Blaine is far more connected with that organization than I could ever be because he's actually been a part of that organization. He knows far more people throughout the course of that organization's history than I might know. I don't know if Blaine has talked about that from his perspective or if they've just talked about the idea of it. But there's never been any credible reporting on Amy being the one most solely responsible or having the biggest say in the room.
I've heard that too.
On Will Levis.
I've heard that too. And maybe she could have. And maybe Amy Adams Strunk putting Will Levis in her statement and the Titans going as all in on Levis this year as they did was of Amy Adams Strunk's own volition. But I'm with you. People act like that's this widely reported and recognized thing. It's not. Nobody can sit there and verify that Amy Adams Strunk was the one that went all in on Will Levis in the draft and going into the 2024 season. Nobody can. But we don't know. I will say, if I'm, ex-NFL fan living in Milwaukee, and I look at my phone and I see that Rand Carthon's fired, I'm thinking, okay, well, yeah, they fired the GM and head coach that were in place when they drafted Will Levis, who obviously didn't work out. Now they have the number one pick. That makes sense, right? But then as you zoom in closer and closer and you see all the layers of the moves that they have made and the overlapping nature of the leadership and the front office, that's where more and more questions start to come in. But on the outside, you look at, they fired the GM that picked Will Levis. That makes sense.
Well, now here's what I do know about the Will Levis trade or the Will Levis deal that I did not know prior. Is that Vrabel was the one on the phone with Monty Ossenfort doing the trade for the Levis pick. And that there was, at the time, some thought in the room to informing Tannehill that they might try and trade him, which ultimately ended up never happening. So that is some additional context there about the situation. Again, who can you solely put Will Levis on? Because Will Levis was a huge part of the reason that they were 3-14 this year. But again, I default to the coaching staff that was hired here was also brought in to make Will Levis markedly better and failed spectacularly in doing that. Will Levis also failed, but they failed him too, based on what they said that they were going to be able to do and based on what the ownership expected them to be able to do with a person with a head coach specifically that was very, very in tune with the ability to coach up the quarterback position.
Let's hear from some Titans fans.
Okay. 615-737-1045 is the number. The news of the day, Rand Carthon fired after 2 seasons as the Titans general manager. Trey has been waiting patiently. Many of you have been waiting patiently. We'll get to as many as we can.
What's up, man? If they're looking for like a scouting experience in college, all of that, then there's one person that comes to mind, and one of his sons is either going to be 1 or 2 in the draft. I think we holler at Deion Sanders and get him in for an interview.
An interview for what?
Mention general manager. Don't forget to mention that Tennessee ain't got no state tax. So, thank you.
Thank you for the call, Trey. I mean, Deion's commented on it, I suppose, on the news.
I did not have Deion as the GM as the first name for us to hear on the hot board.
I mean, listen, you wanted to hear from Titans fans.
Yeah,
They're telling you they want, well, one of them anyway.
Here's the thing. I saw Curtis on the F&M Bank chat say, Louis Riddick for GM. I saw somebody else say, call Thomas Dimitroff right now. Take a closer look at what the Titans are saying they want in this role. Burke Nihill said to Jim Wyatt that Chad Brinker will have final say over the 53-man roster. They're not going to go get a Thomas Dimitroff, I wouldn't think.
Which is what they need, by the way. They need people with experience doing their jobs. Chad Brinker has never been a general manager, to my knowledge. I know he worked in Green Bay for a good period of time, but he was an assistant GM under Rand Carthon, then was promoted over Rand Carthon, and now he's running the personnel show, the football operation show. What is to say that the people in these positions really understand the direction that they're heading in? How can you trust them? It's your decision to make. I would tell you that I wouldn't. Paxton is next.
Hey guys, man, what a day! What a day! I'm very disappointed in the firing, obviously, of Rand. I really don't think he got enough time to establish himself. I think he was just really starting to get comfortable enough to where he's confident enough. You have to remember this is a first-time GM, so it's a level of confidence, and I think he was starting to reach that. I will say though, there has to be a chill that's rolling right down the back of Brian Callahan right now. I mean, because apparently if he doesn't win a Super Bowl next year, he's probably going to be fired next, right? That's kind of what it seems like. The timelines we're giving, these coaches and these GMs is just it's abysmal. So who do you find? Who's going to take this job now? Are you going to give a first-time GM a try, or are we going to try to get somebody proven? Either way, with the timeline that they get, who's going to want to come here and try their best to do what Amy Armstrong wants us to do when it keeps freaking changing every 10 minutes? So that's what I have to say. I'm very disappointed in the decision. I'm very disappointed in our owner. I don't know what direction we're going in. We're just running in circles. So I'll hang up and listen, guys, man. What a horrible day. Thank you.
Circles would indicate that there's some return to relevancy here, and maybe they get back. Again, listen, if they win, none of this will matter. People will forget about how mad they are today about the decisions that were made. The thing was, with the Vrabel thing, they never got that opportunity to feel better about it because they didn't win any games. They won less. More inexperience in these jobs is not what this franchise requires. There are people that had Amy's confidence in making decisions, in helping to make decisions. Ultimately, the decisions are hers to make. Floyd Reese, the longtime general manager, who most recently, unfortunately, passed away. I know many of you, maybe didn't know Floyd on a personal level. That's one of the first people that I got to work with when I moved to town. I have so much love and respect for Floyd Reese, and I know she did too. Steve Underwood, who twice retired from doing a job over there after working very, very closely with her father, Bud Adams, and then coming back in to help right the ship once she took it over as controlling owner. He has since retired again, though I'm sure that they still keep some level of contact. I would hope that they still keep some level of contact, but I don't know if he's consulting in a professional role anymore to that effect. Who are the people now helping her make these decisions? Are they capable of helping her make these decisions? Does it even matter if she decides she wants to do something a certain way and does it anyway? Because all you have to work off of is statements, and she doesn't have to answer for any of it. More of your phone calls coming up next. 615-737-1045 is the number. The Titans have fired general manager Rand Carthon. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. The Titans have fired general manager Rand Carthon. People heard as recently as Sunday that he was out. She's reportedly, according to not just people that I've talked to, but on a variety of different fronts, there are multiple instances out there of people talking about when she might have decided that she was not interested in having him as the general manager anymore, Amy Adams Strunk. My question is, why is it always the day after everybody else makes their decisions? What's the logic behind that? Letting this stuff hang out in the air. You can, because I called it trash. Firing people in this manner where everybody else knows that they're getting fired, and the people who are probably getting fired know that they're getting fired, even if they haven't been told officially by the organization that they're getting fired yet. How is that not treating people poorly? How is that not wildly disrespectful? That to me, if somebody ever did that to me, I would feel that was trash. It doesn't matter the tone in which the news is delivered. This thing hung over the city, the organization, and the fan base for 2 days, like a bad smell. Why now? That's an explanation that's nobody's been able to give me yet. And it's one that I can't wrap my head around. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved with the conversation. I'm curious to see what people outside of the local market. I've had, Jackson, this is probably worth finding me for. I've had multiple national media people text me today asking about how they should treat this situation when they go on their various platforms. That's fine, I'll take it. When they go on their various platforms to talk about the Titans, because many of them are leaning towards killing them for it, the same way that they killed them for firing Mike Vrabel at the time, even though they probably weren't privy to all the different things going on in there and not necessarily understanding that Mike Vrabel was either actively or passively subverting the people that he worked for in some form or fashion because he didn't like their decisions. Now, Mike might have been right. There's reason to believe that he was. But you can't do that in any level of business and expect to keep your job.
Right about what exactly? Rand Carthon not being qualified? Right about the marriage not being one that would work?
Them not making decisions that would put them as an organization, the people at the top of the organization, making decisions that would be in the best interest of getting this football team meaningfully competitive again.
So, in turn...
And also,
right about them that they should not have hired Rand Carthon. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, you're saying
that's what they're saying. Is it not?
Yeah, about after firing him.
I mean, they're not saying that Mike Vrabel was right. They would never. They would never. They spent too much time trying to make everybody think that they got it right after they let him go. And they, again, they might well have. If this turns out well, nobody's going to care that Rand Carthon got fired other than Rand Carthon and the people who think he got treated poorly. But this is an admission that they got it wrong, and the person who advised them against doing this in the best interest of the football team was right, even if he went about it the wrong way. You disagree with that notion?
No. That I see what you're saying.
615-737-1045 is how you jump in there. Henry is next.
Hey, Buck. Hey, Lucas. Love the show. I've got to say, I do think it's crazy that Rand was let go before Colt Anderson was. I understand they answer to different people, but special teams cost us multiple games this year. Secondly, if you fire one, I do think you should just flush it all and fire the whole thing. Have a whole fresh start, go in with a fresh draft pick, and just build up from there. Very rarely does it work out that a new GM comes in and likes the old coach that was there. Anyway, have a good one.
Thanks for the call.
Now, in a weird way, and I get the logic, because I kind of held similar logic of, well, you keep Callahan and you fire Rand, and now you're bringing in a GM who doesn't have his guy as the head coach. But clearly, with the structure that's been laid out by Brooke Nihill, the leader here is Chad Brinker.
And that
Brian Callahan is still his guy.
And by the way, they've invested far more in Brinker than they have in Carthon, even though Carthon got an extension here that they'll pay for the next 4 years unless he gets a general manager job to offset it. They've invested far more in things under Brinker, and not just Brinker specifically from a financial standpoint, but everything that Brinker was over, right? The data science, the analytics department, all these different things that Brinker was over, even though his background is in traditional scouting, and he himself may not be the foremost authority on the analytics side of things. That is a significant amount of investment that they're clearly not willing to clear out because they've dumped a bunch of resources into it. And so it's easier for them. It's easier from our perspectives to say, no, get rid of it all. Get rid of it all. You made a mistake. It's 3-14. Get rid of it all. It's easier for them to say, no, why would we get rid of it all if some of this stuff, because we've spent so much money in this and we don't want to, completely heel turn on the thing that we've just committed to a calendar year ago, essentially. It's easier to just plug somebody else in that's going to go along to get along. More collaborative effort, but collaborative in the way that we think that these things should be done, even though the way that they think these things should be done has led directly to 3-14 and the number one overall pick and the worst team in football.
And then to Henry's point about Rand Carthon getting let go before special teams coordinator Colt Anderson, Brian Callahan did say yesterday that the early part of the week is about talking with players and sort of addressing that side of the football part of the organization, and the staff stuff is going to take place kind of later in the week and in the coming days. But I'm not going to say Rand Carthon got let go before Colt Anderson. I'm going to say the same thing that I said the day John Robinson got fired. Chris Ballard is still the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts. There was a time where we were sitting there comparing records, John Robinson to Chris Ballard, and saying, how does one still have a job? Since then, the Titans have fired 2 general managers and are about to hire a new one, while Chris Ballard will be retained, as Jim Irsay laid out in a statement on Sunday.
And you know what? The Colts probably have a better record over that time.
Over that time, probably, yeah.
Except the Matt Ryan year, they were definitively worse.
Yeah, well, they never bottomed out 3-14 type of season in the last few years, I should say.
Think about that, though, because the one thing that we have left in the rundown that was a part of the plan today before, like I said, we had heard that Rand Carthon was going to be fired on Sunday. Everybody seemed to know that Rand Carthon was going to be fired on Sunday. They didn't do it until Tuesday for reasons that are completely inexplicable.
Well, no, nobody knew definitively what was going to happen here.
No, that's fair.
Nobody knew definitively.
But nobody knew definitively that Vrabel was going to get fired on the Sunday.
It was just up in the air.
It was just, it was being spread everywhere.
It was a feeling of, this might happen.
Lucas, it was being spread everywhere. I know you were here, and, I'm at the stadium with a bunch more people around these things,
I understand,
but it was being spread everywhere.
It was, but you didn't call me on Sunday and say, Rand Carthon's getting fired. You said,
I texted you.
Yeah, you said, I think he might get fired. Nobody knew what was going to happen.
That's a fair...
This was not a thing where you could say, I knew since Sunday. There was noise. There was smoke.
That's a fair differentiation by you. But we have AFC South dysfunction to lead the noon hour. And so, now with the news that Rand Carthon has been fired, who's the most dysfunctional team in the AFC South? 615-737-1045. You got a bunch of phone calls. We're going to get to a bunch of them. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone.
Breaking news this morning with the Tennessee Titans. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The Titans are parting ways with general manager Rand Carthon after 2 years holding the position. They announced in a statement from controlling owner Amy Adams Strunk earlier this morning. President of Football Operations Chad Brinker will lead the search for a new general manager, while head coach Brian Callahan will remain in his role. Team president and CEO Burke Nihill said to Jim Wyatt in a statement on TennesseeTitans.com that Brinker, Callahan, and the new general manager will work together to make roster decisions, but Chad Brinker will, quote, break ties with respect to the 53-man roster and will be the final authority on all football matters, including the roster. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Gaskets been blown, screws are loose, the wheels have come off. But that's just another day in the city of Nashville, Tennessee, when it comes to covering the Tennessee Titans. They make the decision to fire Rand Carthon today. Well, they made the decision to fire Rand Carthon before this. It just took them until today to announce this. So you take that for what it's worth. My position is this. I believe it to be, there again, there are plenty of people who have worked in that organization who have told me several times over in ways that have not necessarily been reportable word for word that Rand Carthon was not doing a good job. But they have also said similar things about Anthony Robinson and Chad Brinker, and those two people are still involved with the way that this is going to go down. Now, I don't know if Anthony Robinson gets let go after this because he was very closely tied to Rand Carthon, but I've heard plenty of things, not quite to the same effect of Rand Carthon, but about Chad Brinker and his level of ability to do this job correctly. In the same ways that plenty of people are putting out, I'm not going to call them hit pieces, but critical pieces now after a person has been fired that were not available or people were not willing to disclose at the time that this person was doing this job. My position on it is it should have been a clean house opportunity with the number one overall pick, because if you fire Brian Callahan for not meeting whatever your level of expectation is as a franchise next year, it looks incredibly short-sighted. It's undermining a GM out the gate. Would you not agree?
Well, again, we're going to have to do a constant reminder of this. The general manager that they bring in is not going to have the job description of a typical general manager in the NFL, of final say, final authority on the roster. Burke Nihill said, he has literally said it, according to Jim Wyatt on TennesseeTitans.com, that Chad Brinker will break ties with respect to the 53-man roster. He is the tiebreaker when people are butting heads or have disagreements when it comes to roster decisions. Brinker has final say.
Why should we just defer to that, by the way? Why should be there any difference other than it's been said, and that's the way that things are going to be?
And it hasn't been said before.
Why is that okay?
We haven't gotten a true answer before,
other
right?
than the president of football operations being promoted over the person that he was brought in under.
Yes, but the question has been asked whether it was, when it was Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker, whether it was Vrabel or Callahan as the coach. Okay, but when you have disagreements, who has that final? We've not had a clear.
Now it's on Chad Brinker.
Can you say with any degree of certainty that Rand Carthon truly had final say, final authority on the roster in 2024?
I truly cannot. I don't even know how I would describe the 2 years that we just spent trying to figure out what the hell it is that Rand Carthon does.
So in a weird way, if Rand Carthon did not have final authority on the roster in 2024, in a weird way, this is a roundabout way to continuity going into 2025. If Chad Brinker had more of that authority all along, we don't know that. And
it's a level of continuity that does not involve one specific party.
Yes.
But why should anybody just defer to, okay, well, Chad Brinker should get final say? Why? Based on what? He is also a part of the 3-14. There was a question asked of Brian Callahan yesterday specifically about Chad Brinker's level of involvement, and he went on at some length to describe the things that Chad Brinker was involved in. I put out that clip on Twitter, and somebody responded, no, not involved, complicit. 3-14, everybody is involved here. Everybody was on in this collaborative effort to sink to the bottom a team a franchise that had legitimately good things going for a period of time, why on earth would it be any level of acceptable to say, yeah, the guy that was also in the building, his deal now. He's got it.
Yeah, I guess that's another big question here. Is this move...
What the hell is that?
Is this move an indication that Rand Carthon is the person most responsible for them being 3-14 and in the position that they are in?
Which, to me...
Is this a move to indicate Rand Carthon is the person most responsible for, A, drafting Will Levis, and, B, putting your chips in around Will Levis?
I think it's a very easy story to tell after the fact. The same way that there were stories out there about how Amy greenlit the opportunity for John Robinson to extend A.J. Brown, while in real time greenlighting, being 100% on board with them trading A.J. Brown at the time that it went down. And there you can nitpick whether John got the negotiations wrong and if it was too far gone. And she said at that point, okay, trade A.J. But like there's so much here that's so easy to pin on the person that gets axed after the fact. And like I said, I have reason to believe that Rand Carthon was not doing a good job. That's why I got on here in part and said clean house. But the people who are also responsible for 3-14 are still there. And one person is not, you're not going to tell me that one person was primarily the reason that they're 3-14. You just won't convince me of it. I don't think that's there's even an argument to be made that one person solely. I wouldn't even put that all on Will Levis. Will Levis and the on-field performance is the thing that you could probably most easily point to and say, no, that's why this thing cratered the way that it did. But, I mean, they can't even themselves make a compelling argument that Rand was most responsible for Will Levis when he was brought in specifically to supplement Vrabel by their own admission, when Vrabel didn't want him.
One key criticism of Carthon that we've had today and previously is that there was too much talk, right? That checked all the boxes, ball didn't bounce the right way.
There was a lot of talking coming from a lot of people.
Sure. But Rand Carthon, I think, was probably it was more on him than anybody else in terms of too much talk in the offseason and during the season. So is he going to talk now? That's my question.
Do you know how many times Rand Carthon gave a press conference? I mean, he did interviews, but gave a press conference. 4 times. 4 times in 2 years.
No, I know, but at some point along the way, are we going to hear from Rand Carthon on how this went down?
No, because he's getting paid. He's not going to say anything.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'll take your money and I'll leave. I'm better off without you. See ya. I don't need this in my life. 615-737-1045 is the number. Same reason you haven't heard Mike Vrabel probably take them down the way that he wants to take them down, the way that I'm sure Mike wants to take them down, because, yeah, I'll take I'm not sure what Mike's contract was exactly, but he's happy to take his money and go on and race Jameis Winston with the Cleveland Browns and take another job where he has more control because he seems to know what he's doing. Let's go to Reed next.
Hey, Buck.
Hey.
Hey, very glad they fired Rand. Very disappointed they kept the other 2. Clean house. The wife says to clean house. We've been doing a little day drinking.
Excellent. Love that for you.
Yeah, it's great. We're day drinking, feeding stray cats. But
you know what? That sounds like a lovely afternoon to me. I'm down.
It's wonderful. We've rescued 20 cats inside, and we've got 7 outside we feed.
Oh
but if you keep the other 2, your win ceiling goes to maybe 5. Like, what's our hope for next year? And then on top of that, we're trusting these people that screwed everything up to waste the one time we get a number 1 pick, and the draft class isn't even that good. So what hope do we even have? What do you think?
Quarterback.
All right, we'll see you, Buck.
See you, buddy. I loved it. I told Jackson we're not doing the Oscars music on people today, but people are, for the most part, getting to their point and moving on with it. 20 cats in the house is wild. It's wild, but it kind of sounds like the Titans organization right now. It's running around trying to herd cats. With everything, and listen, there's an article out on paulkaharski.com. A lot of some of the things that I have heard to the effect that are just now being reported by Paul. Some of the things that I haven't, regarding a degree of necessarily not having the work ethic that is required in those jobs. And that's something that I've heard basically the entire time that Rand's been here. Now, I think here's the other part of this that, me specifically, I try to be careful with when it comes to the way that Rand Carthon is being described in this piece. Did you read PK's piece? Okay. When you start to talk about people using descriptors, you have to be very cognizant of coded language when you're talking about a black GM doing a job and alleging laziness. The first black general manager that the Titans organization has had, that's not something that, like, plenty of people are comfortable using coded language privately. Some people are comfortable using coded language publicly. But when you get that level of feedback, when you don't see those things for yourself, other than being provided specific examples, that's always something that I'm going to tiptoe around a little bit, because I think some of that can be tossed around a little too easily by people who are too comfortable throwing that kind of stuff around. Let's go to Tommy next.
Thanks, Buck. Whether the firing was right or wrong, it shows the NFL that we are not a stable organization right now. And I think for the first time, it also shows the NFL that our owner might not be a person that can make good decisions. I think Miss Amy needs to come off the perch. I think she needs to get in front of the podium and let PK and other people ask her serious questions about her leadership. And I think she needs to answer things instead of giving cliche comments about the situation. Thanks.
I appreciate it, Tommy. I agree. She's never going to do it. Like, that's just not. I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. You know what I'm saying?
Josina Anderson, who was one of the people that was providing some of that smoke around Rand Carthon Sunday when she said that many high-level personnel folks around the league were talking about monitoring the Titans GM position. She just took to Twitter saying, the Titans have parted ways with Carthon. This was indicated to me days ago that this was up for discussion. There had been questions around the league as to the dynamic between Carthon and Chad Brinker and who really had final say and where that fell within allowable policies. Several execs around the league had been asking about this to pertinent league officials. Now, as some expected and thus monitoring closely, it all apparently came to a head. She continues, she says, by the way, the concerns and questions surrounding this had been raised and going on for many weeks. Some league sources were wondering and asking, what's the point of having rules or policies that oversee these roles if there's at least an appearance or impression of said rules being potentially skirted? Now the Titans move on.
So it's a lot of words. Josina tends to do that in her tweets. So what I think she's getting at there,
talking about rules in terms of job description in an NFL front office.
Yeah, like do you have a GM that's being propped up that's not actually a GM when you have a shadow GM? Essentially, is like, what are the rules regarding having a shadow GM that's not actually the GM? Because that's what this is. I mean, they've told you that's what this is. They told you that when they promoted Brinker over him.
And they're going to bring in a general manager that, again, will not have the full job description of what you assume a general manager to be in the NFL with final say. They are saying the new GM will not have final say. That will be Chad Brinker.
And Josina is basically saying people around the league are wondering if that's allowed.
I've never heard that as an issue because there are different structures in front offices across the NFL, right? There are owners that have final say, that have GMs.
Sure,
I guess that's just assumed that the owner has final say.
John Lynch has assistant general managers. Adam Peters was in San Francisco.
But there's no question that John Lynch, with a lot of input from Kyle Shanahan.
Listen, so you have different dynamics between different coaches. You have some coaches who have had personnel control in the past, but again, this is specifically the idea of calling a GM calling a person a GM without him actually having to be the GM. Like, there are certain things that are required of general managers around the league, whether it's, at owners' meetings and things like that, when they all gather together. Does Chad Brinker have to go to that, or are they going to send the GM? Like all these different things. Again, I don't know what rules do or do not exist in this specific situation. This is the first time that I've had exposure to a scenario like this. But what Josina is what I'm hearing based on that tweet. She's wondering if this specific kind of a structure is allowed. Where it's, is this not a shell game?
Saying Brinker has final say is a step we've not had in recent years.
No, that's
at
new.
no point have they said definitively this is the person with final say. It's all been collaboration. They're saying that with Brinker, but who's on the phone on draft night if they're, talking to the Raiders or the Giants about trading back with that number 1 pick? Who's facilitating
Vrabel
that?
was on the phone with Monty Ossenfort because they know each other, right? Like that's. I guess it's depending.
it varies.
Who has the? I mean, there are people who will make calls calls to an organization and on behalf of an organization that don't always have to be the general manager. Like that's why there's so many people in the draft room. There's phones. You have to deal with a variety of different people. You're dealing with agents. You're dealing with front offices around the league. People are calling you. You're dealing with players. You're dealing with families. You've got all manner of people who are in those rooms speaking on behalf of the organization. But the question is, does this person have to be the person running the show, essentially? More of your phone calls coming up next. We're going to talk about who now looks like the most dysfunctional AFC South team, because God knows they've got plenty of it in this division. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. You know, it's a funny thing about wanting people caring too much about what people think of you. Yeah? And listen, I'm not going to act like I don't care what people think. Everybody has some level of what are other people saying about me? How do other people view me? All these other things. But if you're an organization that wants to look sane, competent, and sound, and you take the one specific path, when you care so much about how you're viewed, how you're discussed, how you're treated, the level of attention that's paid to you, and you do the one thing that will make you look as dysfunctional as humanly possible, I genuinely wonder what the defense of this is going to be, other than, yeah, no, I mean, there's an article from Paul Kaharski saying he's lazy. Well, okay. Why did it take you so long to get rid of that person if that was the thing? Wouldn't that be grounds for firing right out of the gate? Why wait till Tuesday if you knew for a period of time, however long that period of time ended up being?
Whether you got an extension.
Whether it's Sunday. That's what I'm saying. So the extension and the statement of support around here seems to be the biggest kiss of death. John got an extension. Vrabel got an extension. Carthon got an extension. Fired. Vrabel got a statement of support. Malarkey got a statement of support. I don't know if John specifically got a statement of support. Probably not, because she was getting, the ownership group was getting double middle fingers in the Philadelphia owner's box as A.J. Brown was towel whipping the goalpost after scoring 2 touchdowns on their necks. But, if you wanted people to think that you were doing a good job and you chose the one path that made you look as foolish as humanly possible or as unstable as humanly possible, again, whatever... They may be sound and they may be proven right in their decision making, but they are making people think that they don't know what they're doing. I don't know how you could view this as any other thing, even if you cite his record as general manager. That's Brian Callahan's record too. That's Chad Brinker's record too.
Yeah, the only way to come out on the other side of this in a good light is to make the right decisions in personnel and win games. And there are plenty of organizations that make decisions that look phenomenal optically, right? PR-wise, that are disastrous on the field, and people get fired as a result. And maybe this is the opposite of that, but this is a hard thing to win. This is a hard thing to win in the eyes of the media, what national voices are going to be saying, what local voices are going to be saying about you. It's a hard thing to dress up and to justify in terms of the overall approach and direction.
Is Blaine on today?
Yeah.
I cannot wait. The most important person, the most important voice on this radio station today is Blaine Bishop's. Because this is his franchise. This is his, it's not his by ownership, but Blaine is I have tremendous amount of respect for Blaine Bishop for a variety of different reasons. But Blaine is so honest in his assessment of things and is so attuned to the way that things are done and the way that things are spun, and the way that people are dragged after the fact publicly, whether it be players or otherwise. Blaine Bishop's voice is the most important voice on the radio station today.
I agree.
I'm looking forward to hearing from Blaine and Zach 1 to 3 after us, because I'll just come in here and bitch and moan and tell you, because I've told you what I've thought of them all season long, and they seem to have an uncanny way of proving me more right than wrong on a regular basis, unfortunately. But Blaine's is the most important voice on the radio station today. So Blaine and Zach is must listen every day, but today in particular, Blaine Bishop. I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say. Who's the most dysfunctional team in the AFC South right now? Because I think it's them. The Jags are a mess.
Yeah.
The Jags are gross. Maybe I shouldn't speak so declaratively when the person that hired Urban Meyer. So how many coaches has Balky gotten to hire and fire?
In Jacksonville?
Yeah. Because this is now Peterson, Herb. Was there another before Urban Meyer?
He took over as the general manager of the Jags in 2021. He was the interim general manager in 2020. So he was the director of player personnel in February, and then in November, he was promoted to interim GM after the firing of Dave Caldwell. Now, Urban Meyer replaced Dave Caldwell, correct? Wasn't Urban's disaster season 2021?
Yeah, I don't even remember the Dave Caldwell tenure of the. I thought it was Doug Marrone.
David Caldwell was the GM that Bulky
Bulky
replaced, is what I'm saying. Sorry, I probably did not articulate that well.
Yeah.
Urban took over in 2021. That was his 1 year. So, yeah, I guess it'll be Urban, Doug Peterson, and ex-head coach that Trent Baalke will be hiring.
All right, so maybe it's the Jags. Because the head coach isn't even going to answer to the general manager. He's going to answer to Shad Khan. So maybe it's still the Jags.
Yeah. And then,
but people are going to say the Colts and Irsay because what the hell are you doing bringing back Chris Ballard again?
The thing about the Colts is they're going in a direction, and everybody believes it to be the wrong one.
Yeah, but they'll tell you the direction that they're heading. They'll stick with Jim Irsay has a plan in his mind, and he thinks that plan is going to work. And whether or not Jim Irsay is sound of mind, he's not sound of body. Do you know he's only 65 years old?
Is he really?
That's crazy to me because they roll him around like he's
literally
pushing triple digits.
20 years younger than Robert Kraft.
Which is crazy. But, the Texans are winning, so nobody cares if they're dysfunctional or not. The Colts are, they're an average NFL football team. They're slightly below average as an NFL football team. They haven't won a great many games. They haven't won the division in the 9 years that Ballard's been the general manager. But at least Irsay will take questions about it. He will answer questions about it, and he will give you the direction that he's heading other than saying, this, that, and the other. This is what we're going to do. No, wait, 2 years later, this is not what we're going to do, but we'll keep one of them and, we'll keep two of them and not one of them or all these different things, like just piecemealing this whole thing together the whole way along. Square peg, round hole. And then there's the Jags. It's probably still the Jags.
In the most roundabout way.
Does that make you feel better?
Yeah, it's not good company for sure. In a roundabout way, we have more clarity on who will be the shot caller for the Titans roster than we did before. It's Chad Brinker. There is no question about that.
I'm just trying to figure out why I should feel better about that.
There's input and contribution. Right, exactly. And that's the question for Titans fans.
The answer is I don't.
I'm telling you now, we're going to be fending off for the next few weeks people submitting their general manager hot board, right, with a long list of candidates that will not fit what the Titans are looking for in this role.
You know what I think that I don't know Chad Brinker's connections around the league specifically. I don't know who he's tied to, but I imagine it's going to be somebody that he knows well. I imagine that it's going to allow him to kind of operate continually as the shadow GM without having to take the heat of an actual general manager here.
Yeah, and I will say Chad Brinker, let's if you were to put the Titan stuff aside, Chad Brinker had put together a resume that was conducive to getting a general manager opportunity as an assistant GM with the Packers, a very competent and functional organization. But he has been a part of what has been happening in Tennessee. And that's the thing that's hard to ignore for Titans fans. The results will be what they are, and maybe they're good and maybe they're bad. But the resume of Chad Brinker is not one that you scoff at in terms of a guy getting an opportunity to, I was about to say be the GM, but he's not technically the GM, but to call the job. But again, that's the we're going to keep running into that. And that's the frustrating thing because people outside of the Titans, people that are not reading this article from Jim Wyatt with all these quotes from Brooke Nihill are going to have no idea who's really calling the shots for the Titans. We will because we read Brooke Nihill saying that Chad Brinker has final say. He's the tiebreaker when it's 50-50 between he and whatever general manager they bring in.
No, people are saying, because I said I don't know what his connections are. I'm talking about people specifically. People are telling me Green Bay. I know he was in Green Bay for 13 years. But I'm saying, people come and go from organizations all the time. They spread out across the NFL. And I don't know where else that he might pull people from his past into. But I assume that they're primarily going to be from Chad Brinker's past.
Let's hear from some Titans fans.
615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to jump in, FNM Bank Chat also available for your comments to be read on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Give me Preston next.
Hey, guys. Really just thinking of what Amy's been doing. It reminds me of season 1 of Ted Lasso. We've got an owner who is going out of her way to do anything she can to make the organization look bad. We could even go back to the hiring and firing of Mike Mularkey after a playoff win. But between all these coaches and GMs, I think the one thing that I want to ask Amy as she's sitting in Texas in her mansion drinking a margarita is what is the definition of insanity? And that's when you do the same thing over and over and you repeat yourself. And I think this Chad Brinker move, elevating within and letting him make the decisions, is going to cause a narrow field of who we can have as a GM. It's not going to be good for the Titans. Thanks. I'll hang up.
That's just what you said in the commercial break, Lucas. Thank you for the call, Preston.
No, I was on board with what you were saying. If you're going to fire one, clean house. But I was not on board with cleaning house. I wanted to see something play out, right? I don't think we've had a definitive answer on Rand Carthon as the general manager, on Brian Callahan as the head coach. Brian Callahan is still the head coach. Now I have more questions than I ever did on how much say Rand Carthon had in roster control this past season. Although maybe he did have say, and that's the reason why he's the one getting the axe here. I have more questions than I did before.
One person is not solely responsible for this team not tanking, because tanking would indicate that they lost on purpose.
But bottoming out,
cratering.
Last place in the NFL by definition.
Rotting, being the best at losing, making your they have made Titans fans root against their team because this year was so hopeless. Is one person solely responsible for that? Absolutely damn not. 615-737-1045. Is it McLean or McLean? Up next.
Hey, what's going on, Buck?
Yo.
McLean. Bonafide from Twitter. I've been following you and Lucas for a long time.
Okay, what's up, my dude?
Just tell you a lot right quick. First of all, I don't think Rand should have been fired. Rand brought you a 1K receiver in D-Hop and Calvin Ridley, got you Big Jeff signed, got you JC, got you Brownlee. Snead didn't work out, Woozie didn't work out, but you got your Cush. The line was improving. It should have been everybody stays and we see what they go do next, or everybody goes and you clean house. Because like you said, Chad Brinker and Brian Callahan were a part of this same 3-14 team. And I think you were spot on with your, coded language that's going on around that. Remember, that was something that was said last year when he didn't know what he was doing or didn't have a clue of what was going on. So now he's in control, and now that same message is sticking around. Is there some truth to it? I don't know. But what I say right now is, to answer your question, the Titans are the most dysfunctional team in the AFC South because simply we can't do anything right. Anytime you make the Jags, Colts, and the Bears look like competent franchises, you got to step back and take a look at something in the mirror. Look at Amy Adams-Strunk isn't even talking to us. At least Irsay will get on the phone and talk to us. At least,
Shad Khan did a media call yesterday where he took questions about
on Zoom.
Exactly. And all we're going to get is another canned response, maybe a sit-down with Mike Hugh. She's going to throw Burke Nihill out here. So also, and I'm going to wrap it up with this, I think Burke Nihill is the guy who is now the Floyd Reese and Mike Underwood guy. So love the show. Thanks. Hopefully we won't be terrible, but I have a feeling we'll be picking one again next year. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks for the call.
Amar on the FNM Bank chat, which, by the way, the YouTube chat has been loaded today. Everybody's been hanging out. Subscribe and like while you're there. Obviously a big day.
Look at you, shill.
Amar.
Yes, let's prop ourselves up on the firing of a man.
Well, you're there, you're just hanging out.
That's the most me thing you've ever done in your life.
Buck does not want you to like the video. I would appreciate it if you like the video. Amar says,
they're more inclined to listen to you than they are to me.
If Chad is the GM, they will almost 100% draft a quarterback with the number one pick since they went after Levis. Chad Brinker was part of the leadership that brought in Will Levis. So does that put more pressure on Chad Brinker, who, as we know, is the shot caller in this with this whole situation, despite the fact that they haven't brought in a GM? Will Brinker be feeling the pressure to bring in a young quarterback with that number one overall pick? Will it be enough to have a veteran stopgap in 2025 when the person in charge with final say over the roster has been involved now for a couple of years and has a lot of the issues from the last couple of years assigned to him a little bit? Like, does this increase the likelihood to you of the Titans taking a quarterback with the number one overall pick?
Oh. I don't think so. Again, there are people in the building who have mixed opinions, as there will be people outside the building who have mixed opinions on the players. And we have a long draft process to go through, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I think the thing that I don't think it would have any additional impact in whether they drafted a quarterback with the number 1 pick.
You don't think there's pressure to rectify, because Will Levis got drafted. The head coach and GM that were in place when Will Levis was drafted, they're gone now. Quarterbacks get people hired and fired in this league all the time. So you don't think Chad Brinker will be feeling any sort of pressure to rectify that situation, given that he was part of that group, that regime that drafted Will Levis?
Only if he wants to be the next one fired if he gets it wrong. I don't think anybody wants to be holding the bag for whatever the hell this football team looks like next year. It's hot potato.
But
right, it's Vrabel's fault. It's Rand's fault. It's Brinker's fault. It's Burke Nihill's fault. It's everybody's fault. Whose fault is it?
That doesn't mean draft quarterback on with the first pick and roll him out day one. But there is something to having a young quarterback in place in the back pocket that does relieve pressure when your veteran stopgap is struggling.
It didn't buy anybody time here. I mean, I know
yes, because they played the young quarterback, and we got the answer on the young quarterback. What's happening in Atlanta? Yeah. How much more pressure would be on Raheem Morris in Atlanta if Michael Penix wasn't there?
Well, I think, is pressure on Raheem Morris anyway because
there is
in-game coaching decisions.
How much more would there be if they did not draft Michael Penix in the top 10?
Significantly more. But you know what? People can go back and look at his comments in training camp from them not giving him Penix a bunch of preseason reps and Raheem Morris very adamantly saying, no, we have a plan at quarterback. This is our plan at quarterback. I don't know that Raheem Morris was necessarily the driving force on Michael Penix.
Yes, but I think it's buying him some time. After year one,
I think,
where their season ended catastrophically, they swept the Bucs and lost the division to the Bucs.
I think stable organizations buy people time. I think not rash decision making buys people time. I don't know that. Does Arthur Blank strike you? And again, we don't know these people personally. Hell, we don't even know the person we're talking about on a day-to-day basis around here because she does not make herself known other than to take a few pictures, team mom, laugh, smile, whatever, until the next Tuesday comes around and she fires somebody. But there are organizations that give people time to allow these things to play out. And there are people who have unrealistic expectations or who make rash decisions. And I'm not just making it about the Tennessee Titans. Those people exist all over the league. There are also people, so let's do this, all right? Since we're giving them most of the smoke today, even though I was in favor of firing Rand Carthon because I was in favor of cleaning house top to bottom, let's do it this way. From the perspective of Amy Adams Strunk, if you were sold a bill of goods on the people that you hired and the people that you backed, if Rand Carthon and the sales pitch got one over on you when maybe it shouldn't have, what's to say that the next person wouldn't be able to do the exact same thing? Are you just going to be suspect of every person that tries to come in and pitch you? Because one, they're making Mike Vrabel look right, which is the thing that they probably hate the most, without having to publicly say, even though they're basically saying that they got it wrong. But then beyond that, okay, what did you miss in the hiring process? What flaws were there that other people might have been able to point out to you that you either ignored because you got along with him, because you liked him, because he's a nice guy, because he's a backslapping kind of guy? Unless you don't believe in what it is that he does, and I think there is some. If you don't necessarily buy off on the Rand Carthon personality, I don't think he's as warm and fuzzy as most people paint him out to be. I don't think he's the relationship guy across the board.
Carthon,
yes,
but it is the thing that was his biggest strength, and some of their best moves, some of his most praised moves, Calvin Ridley, the Jeffrey Simmons extension, direct correlation with how he was able to build relationships.
And he can do that if he wants to do that with you specifically. But it's a different thing talking about, for example, people in your building, where there are many people that don't believe that you were doing a good job. Again, like I said, they may end up being correct on this if they win games. But it doesn't mean that the process to get there was right.
Let's take some calls on the other side.
Last call for phone calls for us, if you got them. Of course, Blaine and Zach, 3HL. Many, many more things to continue. Many, many more hours of coverage. I'll do prime time tonight, so if you can't get in here with me today. We'll have the I'm going to do prime time tonight instead of Sam because there's news and, that's what it is. So we'll take more of your phone calls coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Will I have enough money when I retire? When should I start to draw from Social Security? If these questions keep you up at night, let me introduce you to a team that's there to guide you through it and keep you on the right track. That's Trajan Wealth. Trajan Wealth. Trajan Wealth is not just any financial firm. They are your partners in securing your financial future. And they're more than just a fiduciary firm. They're a family-owned, veteran-led team that puts your needs first. Let their decades of experience specializing in retirement planning and wealth management work directly for you. That's what Trajan Wealth has done for many, many years and will continue to do here in Middle Tennessee. Trajan Wealth offers free consultations to help you develop your plan and your peace of mind. So call them today at 615-270-5000. That's 615-270-5000 or visit online at TrajanWealth.com. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is a paid advertisement. So what do you think? We come in next Tuesday and we're fired next? Who's next? Who's next on the chopping block? We taking betting odds?
I got minus odds.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, you know.
I'm cooked.
I've been trying to do that for years. At this point, we've only worked together for 6 months.
You succeeded.
Oh, goodness. I shouldn't laugh. I mean, I feel bad. I genuinely feel bad for Rand Carthon today because he's being made the scapegoat when there are so many other people responsible for why the hell this thing is I almost cussed, but a crap show at this point in time. And, you know, easy to find one face and pin the blame on them primarily and just keep it rolling, whether it rolls or not. They're just going to do what they're going to do, man. Like I said yesterday when I did that whole spiel about I don't trust the decision making of Amy Adams Strunk, and I don't necessarily trust the decision making of the people around her helping her make these decisions at this point in time. The thing that would frustrate me the most, if I was a fan of this, is there was a time when they had something going. How fast have they ruined that? How fast? And I know things are cyclical in the NFL, but like well-run organizations don't crater this way. Not this drastically. Not from 6 consecutive winning seasons to just unrelenting hell.
Oh, I'm sure you could find examples of franchises bottoming out in this way and then climbing back up. Dysfunctional organizations climb out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Because you can get lucky and draft good players and they can cover up your dysfunction.
Functional organizations climb out of it. That's what I meant to say. And if the Titans climb out of it or not remains to be seen. Again, the results are what will determine whether any of the, whether they get it right at some point along the way.
Well, it's the same position that I'm going to take when they fired Mike Vrabel last year. You damn well better get it right. Because the city is already over you. I mean, they should. Your grand Houston Oilers game. I felt bad for Robert Brazil in his gold jacket getting out there doing the sword planting thing in front of, 7,500 people? But those Oilers uniforms, they look great. You should buy one, right? Man, get the hell out of here.
Let's take some calls.
615-737-1045 is the number. How about Joe?
Hey, how's it going, fellas?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, I think the guy they're looking for, the way it sounds, is Jim Nagy. He's 18 years NFL scout. He's got 4 Super Bowl wins with teams he's been with out of 6 appearances. It sounds like that's the mold right there that they're looking for.
Maybe so. And I know didn't Jim interview for the Jets job? He's got a pretty good thing going in Mobile, though. He's turned the Senior Bowl into a real. I mean, it's always been a marquee event, but he's turned that into something with an incredible. He's got a great team around him as well. So I don't want to just give credit to Jim because there's so many different people that have worked on that front. But
it's a good point by Joe that's the mold they're looking for. The scouting background of a Jim Nagy. Now, Rand Carthon had a heavy scouting background as well. So what are the differences and what they're looking for in the next general manager versus Rand Carthon?
I mean, if you're going to look at Kaharski's piece, it's work ethic.
Sure.
But again, with a black GM, I'm gonna be more cautious with tossing out the work ethic allegations, even if I've heard a lot of the same stuff. And even if I know a lot of people who do work hard, who did not think that Rand Carthon worked hard enough or was capable of doing that job, a lot of those people think the same thing about Chad Brinker. How about Darrington next?
Afternoon. Hey, guys, I'm going to say this now. I don't want to get all emotional or whatever, but to me and in the community that I've been seeing, that's following the Titans, it's coming off as that's far the token black guy. That's what it's coming off as. Seemed like he was a Rooney Rule hire, and then he's somebody to get rid of. There ain't never been a black person in charge in Tennessee, and so the moment they give somebody the power to, he's out the door. I've wanted Rand fired, but I wanted all of them gone. So this right here backs it up even more to say, well, we got rid of the problem, and now we're going to be all better. Callahan had an interview say all 3 of them was in there together. When you go to court, if you testify, he just testified and said all 3 of them were guilty, but yet only one is the scapegoat. I'm telling you, it look like token black guy. But yeah, I don't want to say no more because it kind of pisses me off that they're going to let this slide the way that it's doing. Yeah.
Thanks for the call. Listen, that's not an allegation that I'm going to lob at them because it's just frankly not my place. but the optics are tough. Duck Falling in the F&M Bank chat quotes Amy Adams Strunk directly. Simply put, Rand Carthon makes the Tennessee Titans a destination for the league's top talent. All right. Now what? Chuck is next.
Just a thought here, just kind of spitballing here, but why not go after somebody in the Ozzie Newsome tree of general manager type people? I mean, he seems like he was, to me, the most successful GM there's ever been in this league, or for a while anyway. But why not go the Ozzie Newsome trend of people in his tree?
Well, listen, you can go I appreciate the call, Chuck. You can go after whoever you want. You got turned down by the top candidates at 2 respective positions last year. Ben Johnson said no thanks. Adam Peters 2 years ago said no thanks. So you can go after whoever you want to. They have to think that's a good job.
Again, you're not going to land a general manager that is going to be up for other jobs where he is the one calling the shots.
Because you've already told them that you're not going to be the one calling the shots.
Yeah. And if this is being said publicly, Chad Brinker has final say, then you would assume it's going to be said privately in these interviews that you are not a general manager in the way that a general manager typically has final say. That goes to Chad Brinker. You're here to work with Chad Brinker and help build out a roster, and you have responsibilities, but Chad Brinker is the tiebreaker. I feel like we're going to have to remind folks of that a good bit over the course of the next few weeks as they conduct this search.
Tony is next.
Oh man, the Titans have spent so much money on players that didn't work out health-wise. For me, the Titans have had a health issue for several years, and Carthon coming in there, I think that was one of the biggest things that we needed to fix. And throughout the course of the season, you could see several players going on to IR. I mean, going back all the way, you can go to start with Campbell or McClendon. You got Diggs, and then Gibbons, and then Burks, and then Murray, and then eventually Snead, and now Cushenberry is going to be in a 6 to 8 month recovery process with an Achilles injury. And to be honest with you, the guy was 9-25 over 2 seasons. The line wasn't built on the right side. Everybody wants to blame Levis for playing with 40% of a line, and one of those guys was a rookie. I think that it falls on Rand. He made trades. He got rid of Bayer, didn't re-sign Henry, didn't make a contract for Tannehill even on the lower end to help with this young quarterback. There are several things that Rand has done wrong and put this team in a bad position, even though he has had a great draft class. Tighten up. That's what I got to say.
Yeah, but everybody else that got it wrong, too, is still there. He can be partially responsible and not be solely responsible. They did a terrible job across the board. That whole spiel, and I know we had to kind of fine-tune my logic and kind of, reel me back in from bouncing all over the place when I told Titans fans to have higher standards. Well, I'm talking about at the very top of your organization, the people who should be held to account, whose decision-making process got you to 3-14, and another general manager and a coach on the hot seat who, if they fire them next year, they're going to be just history repeats itself. And there is zero reason for me to think that the Titans are going to do anything but what they continue to do, which is just cycle on through this stuff until they get lucky enough to get it right.
We got to go, but stick around for Blaine and Zach. I can't wait to hear what they have to say about it.
I am looking forward to it. I got prime time tonight for you at 7 p.m. I'll have more opportunity to fine-tune some thoughts and get some more information for you. I look forward to it then, but like I said, Blaine and Zach is what you're going to want to listen to, because Blaine Bishop is going to have thoughts, I would assume, and I personally, and I know many of you are, looking forward to hearing them.